Cinema, we're told, is obsolete. This is the opinion of Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix, and he declared that the communal movie-going experience is an outdated concept. According to him, we no longer crave the big screen, the ritual, the shared gasp in the dark. Instead, we just want to stream in solitude a solipsistic experience, or at best, with our cat and a pizza. But is he right? I don't think he is. In fact, Sarandos's statement is less a cultural observation than it is a corporate pitch, one that ignores the three essential and distinct elements that define cinema: time, scale, and community. And this isn't in any way to belittle the the value and the opportunities offered by the streaming services like Netflix, which I think do a very good job. It's about a misunderstanding of what cinema is doing, and that's a misunderstanding which is perpetuated not only by the rivals but also by the cinema chains themselves, who are certainly in the UK so self-indulgent and so overpriced. It's absurd. It's not surprising that they're going under. Sarandos frames the cinema visit as a relic, a 2-hour commitment, a detour from convenience, but that overlooks the fact that cinema going has always been about carving out a moment in time, not about saving it. Indeed, there is historical precedent for flexibility. Think of the Saturday serials of the mid-20th century. Short episodic adventures watched week by families together. These were less like today's blockbusters and more like mini-series, but people still came. Why? Because the cinema offered a ritual, not a treat, but a routine. And that's what we've lost. We've lost that routine of cinema. We've lost the accessibility of cinema, partly because so many cinemas, the accessible cinemas, the cinemas in the street have gone. And you have to go to this big shopping mall to get to a cinema. We can and we should restore the experience of routine cinema. We should trim the endless adverts. We should bring back the intermission. We should make cinema part of the week rather than the exception, because cinema has replaced popular entertainment, popular community entertainment, in the form of the music hall. Cinema has taken that over. And television doesn't reproduce that. Television provides us with, as I said, a solipsistic, a sort of isolated experience, and a much smaller experience. No matter how big your television screen, it is smaller than cinema. And the average home screen, even a 75-inch screen, pales in comparison to the audiovisual cathedral of cinema. The scope of Dune, Oppenheimer, or Avatar is designed to engulf, not to be distanced at, between texts and Twitter scrolls. And Sarandos argues that scale is irrelevant because the consumer prefers convenience. Well, no, that's simply what he's packaged. But that's not evidence, it's capitulation. People eat microwave meals not because they're better than restaurants, but because they're quicker. That doesn't mean we close all the restaurants. And that's really the parallel and the distinction that I think should be drawn. The difference between a packet of crisps and some cheddar cheese and a trip to the local restaurant with your family or with loved ones. Cinema, when done well, doesn't just show a film, it honours a film. And we need to get back into that tradition. We need to make cinema more accessible and more pleasant. The last visit I made to the cinema was such an unpleasant experience. I swore I would never go to that cinema again, and I've kept my word. I never will. And why? Because they were trying to pitch a sort of deal, which they were advertising relentlessly, and then that deal was not actually available when you went along to access it, because it was only for people who'd signed up online beforehand. And that wasn't clear, and I don't like being cheated by an organisation. I certainly don't like being cheated by an organisation which is down on its uppers, and then is arrogant enough not to not to be courteous. Sarandos says focus on the fans, but fans want more than just access. They want atmosphere. They want applause. The reason Barbie worked wasn't the pixels, it was the event. Netflix has produced extraordinary work, from Roma to The Irishman, but without the cinema, without the screen, the space, the sound, these films also lose part of their soul. They become content, not cinema. Cinema isn't dead, but it is genuinely under threat, not just from streamers, but from the slow erosion of habit, from the tyranny of the algorithm, and the idea that faster equals better. To revive it, we need to stop treating it as a treat. We need to make it routine again. We need to shorten the ads. I find, frankly, when I go to the cinema in the UK, I'm exhausted before I've even got to the film, partly by the ads, partly by the adjusting to this to this particular seat, by the by the insistence on people getting popcorn and making noise, and all of this stuff, which actually is about the development of a better community flexibility, rather than the idea that you're just sort of piling on the prices. So sometimes going to the cinema is rather like buying a plane ticket on a cheap budget airline. You get your seat, and then before you can actually get into the cinema, there's so many other things you've got to buy if you want that experience. And I think we need to we need to remove that. We need to reintroduce the experience of buying stuff in the cinema. I remember being introduced to Greek cinema, particularly Greek cinema outdoors, and the joy of people so buying stuff during the film. Turkish cinema, the joy of the intermission, even when the film is actually quite short, the joy of that intermission, that break, because I don't think people can. I think people have no longer have lost the ability to sit through 2 hours, 3 hours of film, longer if you've got the adverts beforehand. And there's we need to be retrained, or we need to have those breaks. And we need to. Ted Sarandos thinks Netflix is saving Hollywood, but some things don't need saving. They need respecting, and they need reviving, and they need nurturing. Cinema isn't outdated; it's outmaneuvered for now. But culture has a long memory, and the lights will dim again. And I think we will enjoy cinema again, but not in the current form. The current form being herded into 7 different locations in the same building, I think destroys the experience, the ambience. I think we have to get back to the time when you could go to a cinema and you could be sure it was big, and you could be sure you're going to be in a crowd of 1,000 or 300 or whatever it might be, and you're looking up and you've got that wonderful experience of curtains and the thrill of hearing a cinema packed with other people oohing and ahhing at the same things that you are experiencing. That is cinema. And that you can't experience at home with your television. And you certainly can't experience it in one of those eight cinemas in Rugby, 8 cinema screens in Rugby, where you're where you're the only person in the film. You're the only person watching the film. And all you really notice are all these lights around you, and the fact that the screen isn't quite focused because nobody's really bothering to check in the projection box, and you feel a bit like a cow in one of those old cattle markets. Moo. We have to change that.